This week we're doing Bayonet Charge by Ted Hughes. We're going to be covering the pacing of the poem, the theme of patriotism, and Hughes' use of similes and metaphors. The pacing is obviously very fast in this poem. With this enjambment, we're kind of stumbling from one line to the next, that we're suddenly onto the next line. That's really reflected in this second stanza here. We're just running right through the lines and we don't have time to figure out the reason of his still running. Notice the use of the participle there, adding to a sense of immediacy. We're in the moment, we're in the process of things happening. In fact, we begin in the middle of the thing. In media res, we begin right in the thick of the action. Suddenly we're running and we don't have time to form proper sentences. Instead, we just repeat certain words here. The whole thing is 4 sentences. That kind of speaks for itself. And with this theme of patriotism, Hughes is very critical of patriotism, and he thinks that it all kind of goes out the window in the urgency of this situation. The tear crying out of sheer love of one's country develops into sweat out of terror and fear. You might look at molten ire, maybe that's about armament production during war industry. The center of his chest, why doesn't the narrator just say heart? Maybe it's the idea of the tough soldier bottling up trauma and emotion. Dazzled with rifle fire, is that literally he's temporarily blinded, dazzled, or is it figuratively he's amazed and he loves it? Or is it also in a good sense of amazed or a bad sense of amazed? He's overwhelmed here. And finally, is that verb transitive or intransitive? All these unanswered questions just add to the confusion and chaos of this poem. Statue in mid-stride, that could foreshadow the soldier's death, the narrator's death and commemoration in sculpture and statues like war heroes, etc. It's again that idea of pacing. We don't have time to list all these luxuries in such an urgent situation. It's also, it kind of contributes to this dismissive tone that all these lovely ideas of human dignity and king and honor, these just go out the window in the yells and the screaming. Finally, with these similes and metaphors, we've got here the idea of the rifle as an extension of the narrator's own arm, as if that's a normal, understandable comparison to make. That's he's kind of projecting his own military understanding onto his own body. This, I love this one, the cold clockwork. Again, we get that dismissive tone. Time is indifferent ultimately, and the participles will just keep chugging along. The idea of the nations, a kind of patchwork of nations on a map fitting together like the mechanism of a clock, like the pieces fitting together on a watch. There's a pun on second as both a unit of time and the second hand of the clock. I think what this whole phrase is talking about is the idea of the heart keeping time, the narrator himself keeping time with that just thumping heartbeat, that adrenaline. And why is that happening? In what world is that meant to happen? Hughes really loves similes and metaphors, as you can tell. I mean, I've only picked some here, but he even writes just totally unnecessary similes. He was running like a man. No, he was running. He is the man. The man is running. So why does Hughes love similes so much? Maybe it's because the idea of war is just so shocking, unfathomable, horrific that we can only approach it through figurative language. We can't think about it literally, otherwise it's too horrible. The yellow hair here kind of becomes the flame of the explosion. It's absorbed into that explosion. That's a really nice image. And finally, this word touchy, linking back to that emotion and trauma we talked about earlier. And maybe we're left with this precariousness at the end, this total suspense. We don't know what's happening, and any kind of bomb could go off at the end. These clods could really be hiding mines underneath. Thank you for watching, guys.